Okay, almost at the end now. Just need to polish off question 5. Name the following intervals. In your answers, remember to include both the interval's number and type. Okay, so we're saying it needs to not just be a third or a fourth or a fifth or a seventh, but we have to say what kind of fourth and what kind of fifth it is. So if this is sounding a bit rusty, there are loads and loads of videos in another part of the website that tell you all about this, and hopefully you'll become really, really good at spotting these intervals. And so let's have a go at this first one. So it's telling us the key is B flat major. By the way, a little trick that I used to use when we're messing around doing all of this business with the scales, and you're trying to think, well, what is the key signature? By all means use the circle of fifths, because really that is that's the way to do it. But if it turns out they're going to tell you what all this stuff is, tell you some key signatures, if you happen to need the key signature for A flat major, well, they've told you it there. So sometimes in other parts of the exam, there might be clues to key signatures or rhythms or rests or all this stuff that you might need to know. So it's worth always having a look around and seeing if what you need is written somewhere else. Anyway, this first one is B flat major. So we're in the key of B flat major, and we've got these two notes. And so this bottom note, well, that is a B because it's sitting just underneath the ledger line that's the middle C line, and this top part of the interval is an F because it's in the first space. Now this isn't just any old B, because we're in the key of B flat major and it's written in the key signature, this is going to be a B flat. And this is the sort of thing that it's really easy if you're in a hurry just to sort of miss, because you're changing all the time from key to key, and you might not notice all of these differences that happen. But it's really important to just make sure that you really check carefully, because this is a B flat, not just a normal B, and that will obviously change the interval that we have on our hands. And the top note is an F. So we need to work out how many notes apart these are, counting the top and the bottom, and that will give us our number. So this is the interval number. So from B flat, we go B flat is 1, C is 2, D is 3, E is 4, and F is 5. So this is some kind of fifth, which is a good step forward. So that's part of the answer. That's the first half. Now I've got to work out what type of fifth it is. Now there's 3 types of fifth that this could be. It could either be a perfect fifth, it could be an augmented fifth, or it could be a diminished fifth. Now the way we make a decision as to which one it is we look at the scale of the bottom note of the interval. This is normally the way I tend to do it anyway. And I ask myself the question, does this note that's the fifth, is this note that's the top of the interval the fifth note of the scale of B flat major, or even B flat minor? They're actually in this particular case the same. So thinking to my scale of B flat, and we know there's this key signature here, the scale is going to go B flat, C, D, E flat because it's in the key signature, and then F. And so this F is in the scale of B flat major, which means that it's not going to be an augmented or diminished fifth interval. It is going to be a perfect fifth, because that's the distance between the tonic note of any major or minor scale and the fifth of that scale. So that's really good. That was quite a straightforward one, because it told us this is basically the first and fifth of the scale. In a way, it's a bit like a B flat major chord, just without the D added in there. So there's lots of clues that tell us that this is a perfect fifth. Moving on to the next one, the key of A flat major. So lots of flats in this key signature, which is very important when we look at our notes to make sure we check that whether they're going to be flats or not. And in this case, the first note to the bottom of the interval is going to be a flat, because you'll see it's there in the key signature. So this is going to be an A flat at the bottom, and it's going to be a C at the top, because these are our 2 spaces facing the space, so A and C there. And once we know that, we can work out the size, the number of the interval, and so that is going from A, B, C, so it's 3 steps from the bottom of the interval to the top, counting both the bottom and the top note. So this is some kind of third interval, so that's cool. So that's the first half done, and then we've just got to work out whether it is going to be either a diminished third, a minor third, a major third, or an augmented third. And this is absolutely straightforward again, because it's again just looking at the major scale that we find belonging to the bottom note of the interval. So in this case, we're looking at the major scale of A flat major. And if this top note, the top note of the interval, the C, if that note belongs in the scale of A flat major, it'll be a major third. If it is a note that belongs to the scale of A flat minor, it will be a minor third. And if it's a semitone lower than that, it will be a diminished third. And if it's a semitone higher than the major third, it will be an augmented third. So we've got a few different options here, but actually this is going to be probably one of the more straightforward ones, because if we think of the way that a scale of A flat major starts, it starts A flat, B flat, C. And so fortunately this C is a member of the group of notes that makes up A flat major, and as a result we can say this interval is a major third. Getting a bit more tricky here perhaps, where we have this new key of B minor, so the key signature is 2 sharps because the relative major of B minor is D major, which has that key signature with F sharp and C sharp. We don't need to know that here actually, because we're really dealing with these 2 notes, a B at the bottom, bit like before, but this is just a normal B now, so we're not dealing with a B flat or a B sharp, we're just dealing with a normal B. And this one here, which we've also seen in the example above, that's an A. So we're going from B to A, quite a big jump from the bottom to the top, but not quite enough for an octave. So an octave would of course be B to B, so we don't have that, but we do have something that's very close to that. So if we count the steps up, so B is 1, C is 2, D is 3, E is 4, F sharp is 5, G is 6, A is 7. So that's quite a big jump. So an octave would be an eighth, if you like, or 8 steps. We're dealing with some kind of seventh. And again, we've got to ask ourselves the question, what is this type of seventh that we're dealing with? We know it's a seventh of some kind, but there are a few different types of seventh again. So the way we work that out is exactly the same way as we did above here. We think about the scale of B major. Now B major is one of those ones that is pretty far around the circle of fifths, almost at the sort of 6 o'clock position, which means that it's got quite a lot of sharps in the key signature. It's got, let's see, an F sharp, a C sharp, a G sharp, a D sharp, and an A sharp, which is quite important here because we're going to need to remember that the scale of B major has an A sharp in it, because in this case it doesn't. If it had the A sharp, so if we had this, and that was the interval that we needed to work out, that would be a major seventh because that A sharp belongs in the scale of B major. Now it doesn't. It's not an A sharp. It's actually 1 semitone lower than the A sharp. It's an A natural, which means that instead of this being a major seventh interval, it's actually a minor seventh interval. Okay, and that's the difference. So if you know your scales, these intervals are really, really easy to find because they will always relate to the major scale or the minor scale, depending on how you choose to work it out, that belongs to the bottom note of the interval. You're trying to sort of match that top note against that idea. So here, actually, if you think about the natural minor for B minor, that's the note that would be there. It doesn't always work out, so it's better in my experience to just think of the major scale and ask, does this note belong in the major scale? If so, it's major. If it's a semitone lower than where it would be in the major scale, it's minor. And if it's 2 semitones lower, so if this had been an A flat, that would make it a diminished seventh. And so there's a couple of different ways that we will find, and even if we were being really pedantic, if that was an A double sharp, that would make it not an octave, even though it's technically a B, it would make it an augmented seventh. But we don't need to worry too much about that. I would be amazed if you were asked to find an augmented seventh in the music theory exam, so we don't need to worry about that at all. But hopefully this is showing that it really, so much of this paper, like so much of the things that you need to know, just comes back to the circle of fifths. There's so much of it that relies on you just having a really good understanding of how the keys relate to each other and what the key signatures are and how the major keys and the minor keys are related. If you know that, there's really no problem here at all. It's only when, sometimes the circle of fifths is maybe a little bit hazy and you're not quite sure how the different keys relate to each other, that this starts to become a bit of a nightmare because you're trying to remember all of these different relationships and they're not quite in place. So I would say, hopefully this is showing that this is all really, really easy, as long as you know how the keys fit together. And talking of easy keys, we've got this next example, which is C major. the easiest of all keys, so we won't spend a long time on this. So it starts on a C, which is even easier, and it goes to an A here above. And we're asking ourselves the question, exactly the same question, does that top note belong in the major scale of the bottom note? If the answer is yes, we haven't counted it, sorry. We haven't worked out what it is yet. So count up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 steps up. Ask ourselves the question, does this top note belong in the major scale of the bottom note? Yes, it does. Therefore, it's a major sixth. Dead easy. And finally, E major. I'm going to go through exactly the same process. E at the bottom, A at the top. Distance between the two, E, F, G, A. 4 steps. So it's some kind of fourth. Ask ourselves the question, does an A belong in the scale of E major? Yes, it does. So it's a perfect fourth. There's a slight difference between different types of intervals. So you get perfect fourths and perfect fifths. You get major, minor, and everything else for the other notes. That's not very good. We should probably change that, and then we're finished. I think that's the end. Okay. Just as a reminder, we get slightly different names for these intervals depending on which ones they are. Fourths and fifths don't come in major and minor, they are just perfect. The others could be diminished, Just a reminder that we don't really talk about major or minor fifths or major or minor fourths. They're always known as perfect fifths or perfect fourths, unless they are too small to be a perfect fifth or fourth, in which case they would be diminished. They'd be 1 semitone smaller, and we call them a diminished fourth or a diminished fifth. Or they could be 1 semitone too big to be a perfect fourth or a perfect fifth, and those would be augmented fourths and augmented fifths. And I'm sure in future exams, when they get a bit more advanced, we'll come up against these slightly more unusual intervals around the fourths and fifths. But anyway, I think we have reached this wonderful moment. We're at the end. This is the end of grade 3. If you're still with me, I'm amazed. Congratulations. I will see you in the next one for grade 4.